What if your team is waiting for you to stop micromanaging? What if delegation could be as simple as write it and walk away? What if they don't actually need you? If that sounds impossible, let me show you why this simple framework changes how you delegate effectively without massive micromanagement, anxiety, and frustration, while still getting good results. If you're new here, my name is Jared, and I'm a high school teacher turned leadership coach. Here's the truth that most leaders won't admit. We are terrible at delegating. So the big question we're going to be looking at in today's video is, what if the reason delegation feels so hard isn't because your team is not capable, but because you've never had a clear process for handing off work with confidence? I'm going to walk you through a 8-step partnership framework. These are 8 basic questions you ask and answer together before you assign any assignments. Question 1 is, what do we want? So what happens is most leaders delegate the task, but they never define the target. They say, hey, can you handle this Q2 report today? But they never say what handling actually means. Is it a 1-page summary? Is it a full-page analysis? Is it a presentation? What happens is your team is guessing, and eventually they guess wrong. You get frustrated, but it's not their fault. So without a clear goal, your team is building something in the dark. They waste time going in the wrong direction. They deliver some work that doesn't meet your expectations, and you end up redoing it yourself, which is exactly what you were trying to avoid. And that literally costs the entire project more money to get done. The lack of clarity creates anxiety within you that you're trying to escape by handing off the task. So the question is, what do we want? What does success look like? Do not assume they know. Paint the picture. Be specific. I need a 2-page executive summary with 3 key insights and 1 recommendation by Friday at 5 p.m. Now they have a target. Now they know where to aim. And again, you're not just answering this question, you are going to literally write this down or type it out in a document around this specific delegation task. When you define the goal clearly, your team stops guessing and starts executing. They know exactly what winning looks like, and you stop holding your breath wondering if they're on the right track. This level of clarity is going to kill your anxiety and get them moving. Question number 2 that you need to answer is, why is this important? You know why the task matters in your head, but does your team? Most leaders delegate what needs to be done, but they never explain why it matters. And when people don't understand the why, they just treat it like busy work. They're going to do the minimum. They are not going to engage. And you wonder why they're not bringing their best results. You have to understand, when you don't give them purpose, delegation is just going to feel transactional, like a little checkbox. They're not going to be invested. They're not thinking critically. They're not bringing ideas. And when obstacles come up, they're going to give up because they don't know what's at stake. They lack the why that is going to eventually create disengagement, which, as you know, will create poor results. So the question is simple. Why is this important? What difference will this make? Connect this very task to the bigger picture. It might sound something like, this report matters because it's going to help us decide whether to invest in this new market. Your analysis is going to directly shape a 6-figure decision. So now it's not just a report, it's meaningful. And again, to reiterate this main point, when you connect the task to purpose, your team is going to lean in. They're going to bring their best. They're eventually going to try to problem solve instead of just waiting for your exact instructions. They're going to take ownership because they understand what's at stake. Purpose turns the delegation into a partnership. Before we get into question number 3, I need to pause and tell you, I really don't just want you to hear these ideas. I want you to apply them. So I created a brand new resource. It includes the questions we are breaking down into a simple 1-page checklist you can use before every delegation conversations. You can download it now using the link in the description below or the QR code that's on the screen. So question number 3 is, how might this fail? Here's where delegation falls apart. You hand off the work, and then 3 days later, your team comes back with a problem you could have predicted. They might say something like, I didn't know we needed the approval from finance. I couldn't access the files. I didn't realize the deadline was firm. And now you're scrambling to fix it, but here's the truth. you saw this coming. You just didn't say it out loud. And when you don't anticipate the obstacles up front, your team is going to hit the wall they weren't prepared for. They're going to lose time, they're going to lose confidence, they're going to lose momentum, they're going to lose trust in the delegation process because it feels like everything is going to require your intervention. And then your anxiety is going to return because you're back to constantly firefighting rather than properly delegating and leading. So the question is simple. How might this fail? What could go wrong? What problems might we face? Speak these things out loud. For example, you might hit resistance from the finance team. Here's how to navigate that. Or the data might be incomplete. Here's a backup plan. Now they're prepared and now they at least know that something might come up. And this is your opportunity as a leader where you are going to think through really practical things. What permissions might they need? What dependencies exist here? What bottlenecks are going to slow them down? What knowledge gaps might they have? You can literally talk about them and help problem solve. You see, when you anticipate obstacles, your team navigates challenges without you. They don't stop working because they hit a roadblock, they adapt. And you stop micromanaging because you've already given them the tools to solve problems. Preparation eliminates panic. Question number 4 is, what is off limits? Your team wants to do great work, but sometimes great work means they overstep boundaries that you never set. They may spend money you didn't approve. They make commitments you cannot keep. Or even scarier, they might take approaches that violate core values. And then you're frustrated because they had no idea that they crossed a line that you never drew. So the question is simple. What is off limits? What should we avoid? What's not okay to do? Again, using the example of the report, we say things like, don't spend more than $500 without approval. Don't promise delivery dates to clients. Check with me first. Don't cut corners on quality to hit the deadline. Now they know where the lines are. Now they operate freely within them. When you set clear boundaries, your team operates with confidence. They make decisions freely because they know the lines, and you trust them more because you've defined what good looks like. Boundaries eventually create freedom, not restriction. Question number 5 is, what resources do you need? So you can delegate the work, but sometimes you don't provide the tools that your team needs. Your team needs access to files, but they don't have practical permission. They need budget, but you didn't allocate it. They need something from another department, but you didn't create the clear path. And then you're frustrated when they don't deliver. But how could they if you set them up to fail? They're wasting time trying to work around problems you could have solved maybe in 30 seconds. And again, they lose momentum, they lose confidence, and you're back to micromanaging. So the question is simple. What do you need from me in order to succeed? Don't make them guess. Be explicit. Do you need time, money, tools, access, help from others? And then when they say that, if you're able to, give that to them. Clear the path. Give them what they need in order to get to the win. When you remove barriers up front, your team executes without delay. They don't waste time stuck, they don't keep coming back to you, and they gain confidence because you've equipped them to succeed. Resourced teams deliver results. Listen, all of these ideas are easy to hear, but they are hard to implement. So like I mentioned earlier, I did create a brand new resource for this video, and I built it with you in mind so you can go do something practical with these ideas right away. Be sure to grab it in the link in the description or with the QR code that I have on the screen. Question number 6 is, when do we check in and when is this due? You can delegate the task, you can set a deadline, and then you disappear. 3 days before the due date, you check in and discover they're completely off track. And now you're panicking. Now you're intervening. Now you're doing the work yourself. And you think, see, delegation didn't work. But it's not that delegation failed. It's your lack of checkpoints. You need scheduled check-ins depending on how big the problem is. So if your team is going in the wrong direction for days, you can catch it quickly. So rather than having big crises, you nip them in the butt right away. What you don't want is small issues to become big crises. You don't want to finally check in and then it's too late to course correct. So the lack of accountability that exists at times creates the anxiety we're trying to avoid. So the question is simple. When do we check in? When should we talk about progress? When is this due? And then schedule those meetings right now. Let's check in Tuesday at 2 p.m. to see where you're at on this financial report. Send me a quick update on Thursday morning. See, now you can catch issues early on. Now you can course correct before it's a crisis. And functionally, I understand that you're not going to do this for maybe a really small task, right? But the point is for long-term tasks, something that takes between 1 to 2 weeks, 2 check-ins might be appropriate. For really big and long projects, it might be needed to have 1 weekly check-in with clear milestones at that check-in, or even do a quick 10 to 15 minute debrief. The bottom line is that when you create accountability up front, you catch problems early. You course correct before they become crisis level events. Your team stays on track, you sleep better because you know exactly where things stand, and checkpoints eliminate surprises. Question number 7 and 8 is, what good will come? What bad consequences will happen? Your team knows what to do. They know when to do it. They know when they're going to check in. They have the resources they need. But do they understand the consequences that are really at stake? And yeah, you did talk about them in terms of question 2 with the purpose, but do they know what's going to happen when they succeed or if they fail? The best leaders go 1 step further and they're going to clarify consequences. Without consequences, both positive and negative, your team is going to operate without urgency. They don't feel the weight of what failure costs. And when the pressure is off, oftentimes performance drops. Not because the team doesn't care, but because they don't see what's at stake. So the question is simple. What good will come when we get this done? What bad consequence will happen if we don't have this done? And it's your job to paint both pictures, and actually write it down. When we nail this proposal, we'll land a 6-figure client that funds 2 new hires and gives everyone on the team better job security. But if we miss the deadline, we lose the opportunity to someone else. We're back to hunting for leads in a slower market. And now the team feels it. They understand what's at stake. And I understand that not all projects and delegation is going to result in positive consequences. But if there is some positive consequences that include promotion or bonuses or new opportunities or something like that, personal growth, reduced stress, name those things. Ditto for negative consequences, lost revenue, missed opportunities, increased workload, reputation damage, team frustration. List them out. Because when you clarify both the wins and the losses, your team operates with a sense of urgency. They bring their best work. They're going to prioritize well, and they're going to take ownership because they understand what success and failure actually means. Consequences create commitment. Putting all of this together, delegation doesn't have to be a source of anxiety. It doesn't have to feel like you're gambling. It doesn't require constant micromanagement. What it requires is partnership, and partnership requires clarity. So we discussed 8 different questions for you to answer before you delegate any project. It's a little bit more work up front, but a lot less work overall. I want to challenge you to do something with today's information by grabbing the resource I mentioned and bringing it to yourself and your team. And if you want accountability and a coach to help you navigate this specific part of your journey, check out the link below where you can access a free 25-minute leadership consulting call. I'll see you guys in the next video.